guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. You know the jam around here. I get to bring the greatest thinkers, teachers, leaders in all of dentistry and share some thoughts and wisdom to help you improve your practice and your life. And today I have a special one with our dear friend, Dr. Christian Coachman. We're going to be talking about how two brilliant clinical minds are better than one. And we'll explain that topic here in a second. But welcome back, Christian.
Great to be back. I hope you enjoyed summer. And let's get ready to the second half of the year. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And so I'm constantly amazed, speaking of amazing, of what you are up to. You're constantly reinventing yourself, adding new courses, adding new things that you're thinking about in dentistry. And I want you to talk about the event that's coming up at the end of the year. And then we're going to dissect some of the components and the why and the story behind it. So can you start there?
So we are specifically talking about this, for me, historical moment where I'm going to share the stage with my number one mentor, John Coyce. Of course, I don't need to introduce John Coyce. I don't need to explain why this is so special. But the idea is that we will give a course together, a 2-day course. More than a course, is a debate. It's a summary of our experiences with digital dentistry in a world where digital dentistry is not anymore the new thing. Everybody's kind of doing some level of digital dentistry. Now it's much more about becoming an advanced digital dentist. What does that mean? And for me, advanced digital dentist is not the one having all the gadgets, is not the one doing everything that is available, because it's just impossible. It's not efficient. Advanced digital dentist is the one that understands in the digital environment what is worth investing in, what is effective, what is not, what is mature, what is not, what is a priority, what is not, what is the impact of digital solutions in each one of the major steps of the process of rehabilitating a smile, treating a patient. So we're going to look at the process of transforming the patient's life with great dentistry. We're going to take this journey and we're going to break it down into the key moments. And we're going to go into each moment, but in a very practical, fast way. We're not going to deep dive into boring, complex topics. We're going to go fast because there's so many moments to cover. And think about this, what people really want to know. They want to know, okay, this is the procedure. This is the moment of the treatment. What is available? What is the comparison between the different options, brands, systems? What are the pros and cons? Why these are pros? Why these are cons? What is mature about this? What is not mature? What looks cool but is not effective yet? Because at the end of the course, the goal is to create a very simple priority list of what is my next investment and where should I go as a digital dentist? What should be my priority? Where do I put my energy? It's just impossible to have everything and to do everything. We need to be smart. So it's basically a digital encyclopedia where we're going to not... Actually, the problem of an encyclopedia is that you have everything. So it's not an encyclopedia. It's a filtered encyclopedia, meaning we're going to take everything and just dilute, filter into what matters and get into final conclusions. And it's going to be a big consensus because it's not only going to be me and John, but we're going to bring some experts, not to lecture, but to be our supporting actors, let's say, on giving us the information. People that are using everything and studying everything and researching about everything. Sometimes these people they know so much that if you go 1 hour lecture with them, you get crazy. You're like, oh my God, this is not for me, too deep. My role will be to play this moderator, instigator, and, as I like to say, thought organizer. I'm going to say, okay, too much, don't go there, that's enough. My question is this working well or not? Give me a straight answer. Why? And why this is better than that? Oh, it's not better than that. Okay, so why not? Why this other one is, oh, you're not sure. Okay, so let's make sure for everybody here, he is not sure about which one is the best. Okay, that's the consensus. Everybody agrees? They're pretty much the same. Okay, next step.
Yeah.
And we want to cover everything that matters.
I love it. I'm going to ask you about each one of those components, the format, and some of the topics we're going to cover. But I want our listeners to know the story. So let's go back in time. How did your paths, intersect and come together? Can you tell that story?
So, yeah, there's a reason why, we are able to put this course together. First of all, the main reason is how amazing and humble John Coys is, right? At this stage, he doesn't have to prove anything. He doesn't need this. And he's still excited about it. I had this idea of putting the course with him because of the course that I did with Mike Appa. So 1 year ago, I was like, okay, I have my courses, they're running well, but I know I can give good courses. I like to say great courses. But I know as well that I have very good skills to take the best out of somebody else. Interviewing, moderating, questioning, challenging, and helping the other person sometimes organize their thoughts even better than themselves. And that happened a lot. And that's why I helped so many speakers put their lectures together. And that was a profession for me, a job that I had, right? Still today, I have this. I work with speakers, helping them. And I remember around 10 years ago in a Seattle Study Club, where the first time that I presented DSD at Seattle Study Club, and of course, Michael Coyne, amazing, another mentor that opened so many doors to me. And he was like, you know what? I want to give you the stage and I want you to tell the DSD story, right? And I remember at that time, I was already doing some work with John Coys, and I said, John, I want to do a case with you, and I want you to do your first complete digital case with me with DSD, so I can present this case. And John was like, okay, let's do it. So we did the full DSD workup on one of his patients, and we gave the lecture together, but he was online. So he was on a video conference on stage, and I was live on stage, and it was epic. And we presented this case with Coy's philosophy empowered by digital. And I remember explaining everything that I learned from Coy's with my own words with the digital workflow. And after the course, I was, everybody loved it and everything. And then Coy's sent me a message, and he said probably the best compliment I ever had in my whole life. He said, Christian, I never saw my ideas and my case being explained better than myself. You explained it better than I sometimes explain it. That's what he told me. So that's when I actually woke up for the fact that it's not about creating new ideas many times. It's about communicating better ideas that are already there. And I always loved to learn from people and say, okay, what is your message? What is your skill? What is your technique? What is your thing? Let me think. How do you explain it? Like this. Okay, do you allow me to try to rephrase it or explain it a different way? And this was always an exercise for me. Even when I was watching lectures, I was always like, if he had say this way, would be even better, right? So I'm saying this because 1 year ago, I said, I want to bring the people that I most admire in dentistry on stage with me. And I want to somehow play this moderator and help them to send their message in an even better way. And that's what I tried to do with the course with Kois beginning of this year, right? And it was a huge success, fully sold out. People really enjoyed it. And it was this, me, of course, I was sharing my thoughts as well, but I was mainly challenging him, asking questions, and helping him express his thinking process. There was also debate. We were debating. We were disagreeing on stage in a very honest, open way with no rehearsal.
And this is Michael
Right.
Appa. You mentioned
This
Kois.
was with Michael Appa.
Yeah.
And it was epic as well. And people were like, when is the next one? When is the next one? Blah, blah, blah. So it was so successful that I said, okay, who's the next that I want to invite? And I said, look, Mike Appa is amazing and he's so well known. And, I need to bring another. It needs to be somebody that is so huge. Who is this person? And of course, it took me 10 minutes to say, it has to be John Kois, to keep the same kind of a level of excitement. And people say, what the hell? Now it's Christian and John Kois. So I said, John, there's one problem. John needs to accept that invitation.
Mm-hmm.
So I call him like 6 months ago and say, John, I have a crazy idea. And if it doesn't make sense, it's all good. And don't get mad at me if you don't like the idea. And I explained to him exactly that, the whole format with Appa and how the whole thing was so casual and so honest and transparent, and how people love the back and forth and the debate and how do you say in English, the bantering
back and forth.
Yeah. And then John was silent for 2 seconds, and I was like, holy shit, went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And of course, John is very structured. And he said, I just need to understand a little bit better the structure.
Yeah.
I cannot do that improvised, but let's do it.
Let's do it. Now, for the listeners, for the benefit of the listeners, we have a lot of young listeners now and a lot of dental students listening. And there are people that listen to the podcast that may or may not know who Dr. John Kois is or haven't been to the Kois Center. So if I'm listening and I don't know who, this is a big question, Christian. How would you describe John Kois? Who is he?
So that's a great question, and I will put some energy here because he deserves an amazing answer. John Kois deserves my best possible answer here. Okay, so who is John? How do I define John Kois? John Kois, to start, John Kois is the biggest dental speaker alive in dentistry, period. That's the first line. He's the biggest name on the lecturing circuit, for sure, in the world that is still around us. First. Second, John Kois is part of a group of professionals that in the early 90s, in my humble opinion, invented modern interdisciplinary dentistry. There's a couple names there that together kind of invented the principles that we are still using today to diagnose and treatment plan interdisciplinarily restorative cases, integrating ortho, perio, implants, everything, from a facially driven perspective. Second line, right? Third line, John Kois has, for me, the most complete, best quality, comprehensive course in dentistry in the world. Not in US, in the world. If you want to learn dentistry after dental school, the best, by far place to go is the Koi Center. Line number 3. He's still the one giving 100% of all the hours of all his courses himself. I would say 90%, because now he has some people in the digital environment giving some, the same way that I gave some courses in his center in the past, but it's him still 95% of the time. One more line. John Kois is one of the most ethical educators I know, in terms of not allowing, not even for a second, commercial interest affect his teaching, his conclusions, and his message. I think that's my definition of John Kois.
Very well chosen words. I love it. Love it.
So that's the reason why that after doing this course with Mike Appa, that is probably the most famous name in aesthetic dentistry worldwide, I said, if I want to keep the same level of relevance, for me, John Kois is the natural move. And I'm so honored with the fact that he accepted, and we are working on putting the program together. And of course, there's a lot of question marks. People are asking, but why should I attend this course? And we can discuss on why this is going to be very, very unique program with very clear take-home message. It's not about only meeting John or talking to me, whatever, but taking home critical information.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you exactly about this. This is the first of its kind, combining not only your expertise, but you mentioned highly practical, scientifically grounded. What does that mean? Share with us what that means.
So, I when it comes to digital, people know me as one of the top digital guys, right? One of the digital pioneers, one of the first ones to really push and explain people how to use digital, founder of Digital Smile Design, etc. But I know exactly who I am, but I know exactly who I'm not. I know exactly what I know, and I know exactly what I don't know, or at least I'm always trying to research what I don't know, be very honest about it, right? I think that, of course, John sees in me great things that I don't even see in myself since the beginning. And of course, that I see things on him that I know I don't have at all, so it's very complementary. And John mentioned that to me in the past. When I invited him to do this course, he told me, look, I'm going to do this. We need to do this together. You are one of the few guys that I have fun, listening to, that I'm learning from, and that I'm excited about doing things and developing projects together. And again, this is just amazing to listen this from him. But from my side, it's being with my number one mentor on stage, but most of that is using my communication skills to take the best out of him, right? I want to condense his career. I want to condense everything that matters that he knows in modern dentistry and summarize it and package it with short conclusions to deliver to people consensus and common sense, practical answers. So the goal is not that we're going to give lectures, right? People say, oh, but why should I go to this course, Christian? I went to your courses. I went to Koi's courses. Why should I go to this course? Because it's not going to be one lecture after the other. It's not going to be him lecturing one day, me lecturing one day. It's going to be us dividing this timeline into moments and creating this consensus around each moment. It's going to be like a chat. Imagine if you are in a coffee shop, you me and John Coys, and we have the connection with some of the smartest people in dentistry to answer any question. It's like a dental Google in our hands. And you can ask any question that you want. And I'm going to give my view. Coys is going to give his view. I'm going to question his view. He's going to question my view. I'm going to challenge him. He's going to challenge me. I'm going to agree or disagree. He's going to agree or disagree. We're going to go to the experts, say, what do you think? We will not allow people to go too deep into anything, and we're going to push people into straight to the point conclusions.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're going to look to each other, me, John, and we're going to say, okay, let's conclude this topic. What is your final thought? Right. And then let's move to the next one.
Yeah. I want you to go back to the word, you used the word moments, and look at the full mouth rehabilitation or this entire thing. There are key moments. Describe what those moments are and how you're going to use those in this course format.
So, if you think about the process of treating the patient, you have initial data acquisition. You have organizing, accessing, and sharing this information moment. You have diagnostic moment based on the information. You have then interdisciplinary communication, team communication, connecting the specialists, sharing information with them, the process of structuring your questions to get the best answers out of people on your team. You have then the treatment planning moment, gathering all this feedback, your perspective from the case, all the documentation, plus the specialist feedback, making decision-making moment. Then you have the moment of presenting this to the patient, explaining, onboarding, convincing, motivating, visual education, ethical education of the patient. Many strategies and tools to be used there. Then you have the moment where case acceptance happens and you need to then move from a comprehensive planning into detailed, specialized planning of each one of the procedures. So disciplinary planning, not interdisciplinary, but disciplinary. So we're talking about the impact of technologies in ortho planning, perio planning, implant planning, surgery planning, restorative planning. You have the process of using technology to plan the procedure. You have technology to help you design and manufacture all the devices involved with it. And you have the technology to help you perform these procedures. And then a bunch of steps into ortho, perio, implants, restorative, right? Then restorative itself, it's a chapter for itself. It's because it's the biggest topic of all, so the digital restorative workflow, from capturing the data, mounting the digital models, the digital patient, the diagnostic design, the restorative design, the restoration design, printing and milling, manufacturing, finishing, materials, different types of materials for digital restorations, delivering, bite adjustment. This is a big topic where John emphasized the importance of really talking about how digital is impacting bite function. Is digital making our life easier on this topic? Yes or no? How? And then the final moment is maintenance, prevention, maintenance, forecasting issues, anticipating issues, and trying to make everything we do last longer, longevity.
Yeah. I love how you've organized this, and it's a 2-day course again. So you have the patient focus, which is the pre-case acceptance, and then the clinical focus, which is the post-case acceptance. Are you hoping to stay day 1 on the first bucket and day 2 on the second, or not so much?
Hopefully, I don't tell John, but I'm telling John that everything is very structured, but I know in reality that things with me end up, open for improvisation and further discussions here and there, and then spending more time over here, less time over there. But I think that the amount of topics and the importance of both moments will be kind of divided like this: one day for one day for the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I didn't even ask you this, but will you be gathering questions from the attendees at all too? Or will you be
we will have an app for questions where people will be able to type their questions at any moment. And we're going to have a person, an expert, a dentist, specialist on all these topics there just for that, collecting the questions and live stopping us and asking us these questions, right? On the right moments. And if the question fits perfectly right in the middle of discussion, the question will be made right there. If we wait until the break, we do it at the end or at the beginning of the next break. But we will give the opportunity for people to ask the questions and make it dynamic.
Yeah. All of us have our Coicisms, our favorites. I have a whole long list of them, and I've heard John say this one. I want to know what your thoughts are. He said a mantra that they have at the Cois Center is, it's okay to disagree, but it is not okay to be disagreeable. You, as the thought organizer for this, you're going to be mining for some conflicts. You're hoping to get a little bit of conflict, don't you think? Tell me about that.
No, people love that. I love to see two smart people disagreeing.
Yeah.
I love that, to just sit and watch, honest, ethical people that disagree, smart, defending their point. And if I'm the moderator and I'm seeing that one side is losing, I kind of go to the side of the loser and I start to pick on the one that is winning the discussion, helping the loser make tougher questions to kind of even the game a little bit, because of course at the end you want to get to a conclusion. Sometimes it's a consensus, sometimes it's in between, but many times is like saying, okay, at this point we all agree that you were more right than you, or you were completely right and I don't think your point was that valid. So, and people need to be okay with that. Yeah, I'm totally okay with that, with people telling me, the consensus is that your idea is not the winner, Christian. And I'm okay, fine.
Yeah. I want you to talk about, you've used the phrase leveraging the digital tools in each step of the rehabilitation. Can you talk about, what does that mean?
It means that we have too much, and many times we see speakers lecturing about digital, and they are not actually using what they're showing in their lecture daily. Many times, digital solutions, they look very cool in lecture, so everybody wants to show. But it doesn't mean they use daily for every case. So I want to know the truth, right? And leveraging technology means using the technology, smart technology, the technology that makes you more effective. The only reason to use technology is to be more effective. The effectiveness is the key word. How effective is this? Oh no, but it's super cool and you can see this and you can see that, but how effective it is to see this and see that? No, but if you see this and say, how effective is this at the end of the day? How I'm going to be more effective? Because the ultimate goal is not to use technology. The ultimate goal is to solve the problem of the patient, is to deliver the solution with technology or without. The ultimate goal is to treat the patient in the best way possible. or to identify that you don't need to treat the patient. So the benefit for the patient is the ultimate goal. We need to work with less stress to achieve that. We need to be faster without losing quality. So we want to be more efficient. We want to be more consistent, less variables, less surprises, right? We want to be more predictable with the outcomes. We want to get outcomes that are more similar to the plans, to more similar to what we envisioned at the beginning, what we simulated, the initial designs. Well, we want all of that, but at the end of the day, we need to be effective. And many digital tools are not effective, either because the companies, they are putting the tool in the market before the tool is mature enough, and we know that happens all the time. Companies are launching solutions and launching technologies because they have a deadline. They're pushed by the market. Shareholders are pushing. Profit, revenue is pushing. They already invested too much in research and development. Beta testing was supposed to happen and finish last month. We got to go to the market. Let's just put an amazing marketing story behind it. People will buy the story. People will buy the technology. People will struggle. And we blame the people.
Yeah.
And people learn. And we're going to have a sponsored beta testing phase. Right? And we're going to learn and we're going to improve. And that's life. Right?
Yeah.
So many technologies are not ready, but sometimes because they are not mature enough, sometimes because the dentist is not using properly, sometimes because the staff is unconsciously sabotaging the technology or not using properly. Sometimes because companies don't know how to teach their own technology properly. That's very common. They teach you to a certain level, sometimes even because of legal issues. They cannot tell you the whole story. They cannot show you all the tricks because some of the tricks were not approved or FDA, whatever, so they cannot tell you the tricks. So you need to find out by yourself. And the company's like, if you do that, don't tell us. And sometimes the reps are even saying, look, this is the trick, but don't tell anybody that I told you.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody asks me, I'm going to say, no, I never said that. Sometimes, we don't know from the options which one is the most effective. So effectiveness is the word at the end of the day, and we want to be effective, even when we have to say, I'm going to do this step without digital.
Right.
Because I'm more effective without it at this moment.
Yeah. I love it. You and I before we hit the go button, we've been around a long time and we know how fast time goes. Sometimes people listen to these and they go, well, I'll just catch Coyce and Coachman on the next one. We were joking, like, if you really want to see the Rolling Stones in one of their final tours, this is it. Can you just speak to this? Like, John doesn't have anything to prove. He's already done it. This is your one opportunity. And he doesn't speak outside, right? He doesn't really do outside lectures that much, I don't think.
So, yeah, I started to think about this a few years ago. You say, who are the big names of dentistry lecturing, right? And basically, when you're from US, you grew up on the 90s, 2000, 2010s, and you could have all these guys, they were all lecturing, for me, the big names, besides John Coyce, you have Frank Spear, you have Peter Dawson, I'm talking about more on the restorative side, right? You have Vince Kokich, and you have Gerhard Schisch, Pascal Magnier, Carl Misch, and others, right? The big names, those names that Dennis Tarnow, David Garber, Ronald Goldstein, Gordon Christensen. Most of these names, some of these names, they died already, and they're not among us anymore. already. Many of the names I mentioned, they are not lecturing anymore. Frank Spear, for example, it's almost not lecturing anymore. You go to the Spear Center, you don't see Spear giving the lectures 90% of the time. And I started to think about, and because John Coyes is always there, so consistent, so strong, right? He looks like a rock. He's like just there, emotionally even. That you create this false impression that he's going to be there forever. There's very few people in dentistry that can teach like him, and he will not be there forever. And just recently, he announced that he's going to take a break in 2026, that next year's annual Coyes Symposium will not be the last. He didn't say it was going to be the last, but he's going to give a break to himself after that. And some people are wondering, is he going to come back and give more of these, right? We don't know. That's why, and I'm only saying this because if you haven't taken his courses, the full Coyes program, and to take the whole program, I don't know, it takes a few years to complete all the modules. I don't know for how long you're going to be able to start and finish getting all the modules from John Coyes. If I was a clinician at this point and I haven't done his course, I would register tomorrow, right? And when it comes to and he already announced that the symposium last year is going to be the last one before this break. We don't know if he's going to come back. And that gives even more power to this event, this combined course. Because I think this is going to be so intense. I really believe it's going to be amazing, unique, because it's going to be him from a different perspective and a complete different topic. But I believe it's one of the last events that he does like that, because it's going to be so intense that there is a chance that afterwards, when we finish on Saturday afternoon, he's going to be turning to me and saying, Christian, this was amazing, but I don't think I can do this again.
Yeah.
Right? So for that reason, I believe people should come.
Yeah.
People should come because of that as well. Right?
Yeah. I want to just ask you about this, Christian. If I'm a young dentist listening, the digital landscape is confusing. It's expensive. There's a lot of moving pieces. It feels like it's changing more in the last year than it has in the last 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me how you guys are going to help me think better about this in Miami.
So the goal is to give, to simplify the digital environment, right? To simplify means it's actually, people maybe be surprised about what I'm going to say, but it's almost like telling people how to do without digital, everything that you can do without digital and still say, I'm doing great. That means that you will come out with a priority list, and the moments to invest on these technologies. If you can come out with the plan for the next 3 to 5 years, let's say 3 years, what do you want to buy on this first year? What do you want to buy on the second year? What do you want to buy on the third year? What is really going to make a difference, and how you're going to get your return on these investments, right? Again, if you buy something that is effective, you're going to get the return. So focus on effectiveness, and then become a master on translating that technology into your daily routine, and become so good at using that solution that you cannot live without it, and your business is better because of that.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. So this event will be one of a kind. What's the one hope you have for people, the attendees, or the one message, or the one thing? Like if I fly to Miami, what do you hope's the one thing I take away from this great 2-day event?
Come knowing that you're gonna see, if you know, if you never saw John Coy speaking, you're gonna see one of the biggest icons of modern dentistry performing. Hopefully you're gonna see, if you already saw Coy speaking several times, you're gonna see him from a different perspective, because it's gonna be almost like a live interview, right? I already told him, don't think you're gonna just give your 1 hour lecture, 2 hour lecture, and then another one. I'm gonna be stopping you every 5 minutes, because I'm gonna ask the questions that I think are necessary to organize the thoughts, so we can get into conclusions and prioritization based on everything that you're saying. So I really want people to understand that I want to make this an experience where you're going to see John Coy from a different perspective. And hopefully he's going to answer questions in a different way, because, as I said, for many years, I've been practicing the art of asking the right questions. It was always an obsession for me. How can you become the best asking the right questions at the right moment? Even sometimes cornering people, right? Like questioning people in the right way, doubting even, and playing the devil's advocate. Say, I do agree with you, but I'm going to pretend I don't, because I want you to convince me a little bit more about the why. And even though it sounds obvious, why not? Why not? If I don't do what you're saying, what happens? Because sometimes people explain something such a good way that you're like, I have to do this. But we don't ask the question, what if I don't do this? What actually happens? What are the downsides? And many times, because the speaker is so good, we have the tendency to think that we have to do it like this. And we don't explore the downsides, and we don't explore the other way. Say, but if I do the opposite way, what is the downside? And now please compare the downsides of both ways. And I do this exercise with myself when I'm speaking, lecturing myself. I do this exercise with others. And I had moments where smart people changed their mind in real time in front of me on their own idea, by asking the right questions and driving people to a specific path of challenging their own beliefs and comparing the other ways with their own way, and going one step further on this exploration, until the point that the person gets to the conclusion of, you know what? This other way is actually as good as mine. You can do it both ways. There's no clear advantage. It's okay. That's fantastic. So you prefer like this just because you're used to it. It's not necessarily better than the other way. And it's beautiful when you can make people go through this exploration and get to conclusions like that. I love getting to the conclusions like this, where people listening can really understand the thinking process behind it. Because then people can make their own decisions and conclusions, right?
Right.
It's not like, oh, these super famous guys, they told us to do this. Let's challenge ourselves.
100%. So well said, my friend. So if I'm listening to the podcast, where do I go to register? We're going to put links down there, but if I'm listening, tell me where to go.
So the course, John Coy and Christian Coachman, Optimizing Clinical Outcomes by Becoming an Advanced Digital Dentist. This course will happen in Miami in March next year. And you can find all of the information on digitalsmiledesign.com or coicenter.com as well. On both websites, you have the course link there. Or you can just click on the link directly on the course page that we're going to have on the description of this episode and go straight to the course page.
Sounds good. So if you're listening to the podcast, you can go right down to the show notes wherever you're consuming this particular episode, whether it be at Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify. You can flip up to the show notes and there'll be a link right there. I'm going to highly encourage you to click on it. It'll take you right to the page that Christian mentioned, and you could sign up. It's a once in a lifetime thing. As always, brother, I'm so excited. Yeah. So,
Kirk, you're invited to come. You're my guest. This is going to be a special one, and we're going to have fun. We're going to have some fun also, as we always do in our courses. So,
well, everybody that comes back from a DSD course says the same thing. Number one, it was an incredible learning experience, but the one thing they always comment on is you guys have more fun than anybody, and need a break, need a little vacation after the course. So I'm excited, brother. So
fantastic. No,
good
thanks
stuff.
for listening and sharing this new project with everybody.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I know that anybody that attends, you're going to absolutely love it. So again, make sure you check it out and register. It's a once in a lifetime event. I promise you, you will love it. So Christian, stick around. I can't even talk. Stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show podcast. Hey, keep sending us suggestions for things you guys want to see. I'm going to have Christian back again and again and again and again. Let me know what things you'd love to hear from him, and we'll ask the expert himself and get the answers straight from him. So until we see you guys next time, or until you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.
So influencing people with some, we might think is interesting behavior to do certain things. And what he did find was there was a pattern. There were, at the time, these 6 key things that stood out to him. And that's what he decided to do his research on and prove these 6 principles of persuasion. And it was only just a few years ago that he realized, out of all of them, that there's a 7th principle. And he wrote a book called Persuasion. It was his the latest book that came out a few years back. And he introduced this 7th principle of persuasion called unity as well. So now we've got 2 fundamental things that we can use to influence people our direction. This idea of persuasion, what can you do before they even get in front of you that creates a mindset that influences them to want to say yes to your request, versus persuasion is when they're in that moment with us. Okay, so we can persuade them before and persuade them in that moment. So I call this the 2 most powerful 1-2 punches to influence people to yes.
Yeah, I love it. So I want you to answer the question people might like. Why is this important for a dentist? And I know the answer, but I want you to speak to it because you are a dentist. You work with a lot of dentists. And if a dentist is listening, why is this important?
This is extremely important. Why? Because when you start making your strategies around what people actually use to make their decisions, the majority of the time, instead of the excuses we hear afterwards, that's when you start to get things done. So in my example, for instance, this idea of consistency states that when people make a real commitment, take a stand on an issue, put skin in the game, whatever, but when they really commit, there's a lot of external and internal influence on them to follow through and do what they say they were going to do, to be consistent in their thoughts, actions, and beliefs. So this idea of if people commit, then they do. Well, then suddenly it became very clear why I wasn't seeing the behavior in my team, in my patients, and in my doctors. Well, I was the crazy one to think they would do because they didn't actually commit. So once I realized how to get better commitments out of them, all of their behavior changed. Okay. And patients started saying yes and referring and doing treatment. My team, I could actually become independent of the chair. I could step out of the office. And when the cat was away, the mice didn't play because of those same commitments. So it literally could change all of your worlds and put you in a much better situation than where you are currently.
Yeah. Take us through the principles of influence and give us a little light on what each one of them is.
Definitely. So, kind of one of the original ones, this one's like biblical. It's called reciprocity. It's as old as time, right? And it's this idea that if someone gives you a gift of value and of significance, this obligation is kind of created inside of you where you feel like you got to give back in kind, right? Somebody does you a favor, you feel like you got to do them a favor. If they send you a birthday present, right, you're probably going to send them a birthday present. So when we are given, we feel we got to give back in kind. The next principle is called liking, right? Liking. We like to do business with people we like. It's as simple as that. But at the same time, we don't like to do business with people we don't like, right? So if there's no relationship present there, if we don't like that person, or we don't think they like us, then we're not likely to say yes to what they're going to say to us or ask. So liking is important along with reciprocity. What's interesting, out of the reciprocity realm, this new principle called unity has now been developed. That's the seventh principle. But all three of those, unity, reciprocity, and liking, really help build relationships with people. So unity is just that. It's not a you versus me situation with unity. It's a we. Okay. We are the same unit. Okay. It's not, we're not two separate individuals. So I know, Kirk, your daughter's at UNC Chapel Hill, and I went to UNC Chapel Hill. So we are Tar Heels.
We
right?
are.
We tend to rally around things that unite us like that, like culture, religion, your geographic location, your favorite sports teams, all of those kinds of things. So we are Tar Heels, right? And we're unitized by that. So unity is a powerful, powerful principle because of that. We've got social proof, okay, which is probably the most powerful of the principles right now with online influence. Right. And Facebook is a classic example of social proof in action, where it's one of the few times you could get on a platform and see what everybody in the world is up to and thinking about all at the same time. So with social proof, it's all about we are heavily influenced by the evidence of what others around us have done or said or are doing as well. So if the crowd is going one direction or thinking a certain direction, there's a pull for us to do the same. At the same time, the other end of the pendulum we've got from social proof is authority. So with authority, we actually still need credible, trustworthy experts to tell us what we should do. Because the truth of the matter is, we don't have time to be an expert in everything. So honestly, if I have a plumber that comes to my house and says, I need a new toilet, okay, I don't know anything about plumbing, so I guess I'm buying a new toilet. So it's not that we couldn't be experts in everything, but because we don't have time, we do need these credible, trustworthy people to tell us what we should do to be our shortcuts. So we still, even in this day and age where we've lost some of the authority's luster, we still need them and lean on them to guide us and tell us what we should do. You've got consistency, which I mentioned before. That's the commitment principle. If people commit, then they tend to do. So if they're not doing in your world, back it up and ask yourself, maybe I'm not getting the right commitments out of them to do so. Right. Change the commitment could change the behavior. And of course, last but not least, scarcity, right? Scarcity is probably the one most people are familiar with. But by definition, scarcity is about resources. So if resources around you are truly dwindling or about to disappear, then that's going to uber motivate you to do something about it. You're going to want that thing more, and you're going to do more to get it, even if you didn't want it before you found out it was about to be scarce. So this reminds me of like when we're about to have a big storm, and next thing you know, there's no more bread and milk at the grocery store, or during COVID and we didn't have any toilet paper, right? And where did all the paper products go? So when we know something could run out, man, does that motivate us to want that thing and do more to get it.
Yeah, I could go off on a riff on each one of these, but scarcity does motivate me quite a bit. And I think of the two instances. Number one is restaurants. If they say I only have one table left, I got to have it. And then also if you book through Expedia or anything, they'll say three tickets left at this price. You're like, oh my gosh, that's like dirt cheap. So that definitely and you could see how these will all show up. Now it's funny that you say consistency, because we've had several podcasts on this. Consistency is probably the number one problem I've had in my life for the last 15 years. And we didn't realize the power of consistency, like setting a course and sticking to it, doing what you say you're going to do, showing up at the same time, having a meeting that works. It's amazing how all of these principles, when you isolate them, have power. But talk about the combination of them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And what's interesting about this is that, we're not making this stuff up. We're not imposing these principles into a situation. They're actually naturally there. That's what's cool about this. Okay. So we're not inventing or reinventing anything. All we are is just recognizing, hey, in this situation, I could use consistency. I could get a better commitment out of this person. Or there is some social proof evidence that I could use that others have already bought this thing. So maybe this one person may want to say yes because of that. So, and when you can find multiple principles present in a situation, that's when they really amplify each other's power, right? And each of them has a pull on us. So, as I like to say, I kind of think of when somebody's trying to decide yes or no, there's like these scales in our mind, the yes no scales, right? And if we don't give them anything to weigh down the yes side, right, to help them make this decision, they still need something to fall back on to decide. And that's when it usually comes down to what's the price and does my insurance cover it? Because we didn't give them these other things. We didn't leverage these other principles that were present when we could have, but they still have to decide. So they fall back on the only thing they do understand at that point. What's left?
Right. Well, one of my questions as I look at it, how much of this is emotion and logic? Like I'm guessing that influence would be heavily weighted towards emotion versus logic. And you're dealing with a different hemisphere of the brain, aren't you?
Yeah. So in essence, logic and emotion tend to come into the kind of more system one area of the brain, meaning conscious thought, right? And conscious awareness, so to speak. Where these principles lie is actually below that surface in the subconscious realm. So that when these things are present in a situation and we are exposed to them, let's say you're walking up to a building for the first time and 50 people come running out of that building, screaming in terror and running in a different direction. Okay. Instantly, it bypasses rational thought and emotion. And your pull is to follow the crowd. Whoa. Yeah, right. What's going on?
Right.
Something could be danger, could be whatever. So ideally, sometimes these principles will generate an emotion after the fact. But what leads to the action is totally subconscious. It automatically, you want to say yes and follow. And then later, then you'll think about it and analyze it and come up with a why.
Yeah, this is so cool. So I know this would be important as a dentist, would use these principles, obviously, in improving their communication with patients. But talk about the team. How, Chris, can you really implement this and use this as a team? And I know you're going to talk a little bit about your new role and what you guys do, but talk about how this would work with my team.
Oh, this is huge with the team because, again, it goes back to getting those commitments out of people. So there's three kind of commitments we can get. We can get active commitments, we can get voluntary commitments out of people, and we can get public commitments out of people. Each of these is important in their own right. Voluntary commitment is very simple. People have to feel like they have a choice in the matter, right? If they don't really feel like they have a choice, that's when they feel like they've been coerced, intimidated, forced to do it, right? I mean, we learned as little kids, we don't like people to tell us what we should do for that reason, because it takes away our sense of control. It takes away this idea that we have a choice in the matter. So just by providing choice, we avoid the coercion, intimidation, the manipulation side of things. And we're on the influence and persuasion side because that's all it is. It's all about a choice. But once they choose, now they're more committed because of that choice. So I'm all about giving people a this or that choice. Which would you prefer? Right. And every time they make one of those choices, they're making more and more of a commitment to get it done. Public commitments are fairly straightforward, especially with the team. If everybody knows you said you were going to do something, well, there's a lot of influence on you to follow through and do with what you said you were going to do, because you don't want others out there in our interactions, in our network, our community, family, to view your thoughts and actions and beliefs as being inconsistent, right? If you think about it, just think about that word consistency and its opposite, inconsistency, right? I mean, there's no positive word in the English language to describe someone who doesn't do what they say they're going to do.
Right.
We get some nasty names for those people. So that's kind of the social influences. We don't want others to view us with one of those negative words. Okay. But the internal pressure is there as well. You don't want to view yourself as being inconsistent in your own thoughts, actions, and beliefs. So it's actually one of the few principles that hit you from outside and from within, which to me, they're all important, but consistency is probably one of the most powerful because of that. So getting public commitments, if everybody knows in a group setting, hey, Jill, you said you were going to get that done for the team. Where are we? And you're back in a group setting discussing it, that accountability alone is going to get more people to move.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our last one there is we've got voluntary, we've got public commitments. Is the active commitments are number one, like verbal commitments. You got to tell somebody you're going to do it. And that's just as simple as changing a statement, like on the telephone, instead of please call us if you can't make your appointment, to a commitment statement. Will you please call us if you can't make your scheduled time?
Right.
And as soon as they say yes, automatically that person is more likely to show, or at least call you if they can't make it, than the other person when you just said, please call us if you can't be here.
Right.
Right. But just that, I mean, there's one study alone about a popular restaurant in Chicago where asking that one question, will you please call us if you can't make your restaurant reservation, decreased no-shows from 30% to 10, just from one active commitment. So getting active, telling people you're going to do stuff, getting them to write stuff down. And then, of course, the highest active commitment is effort. Anytime you put time and money into it, you're more than likely going to follow through and do what you said you're going to do.
Yeah. Now, if somebody doesn't have any experience with this information, they might hear it in the wrong way. And I'm just going to speak to that. They might be thinking, well, you're talking about a science that helps you get what you want from people. And I think you can speak to this. There's a recent study saying that 61% of dentists will face the biggest challenge they will have for the rest of their careers will be finding, keeping, developing great people. And I know you well enough, and I know this information. How much of this is about getting people to do what you want them to do versus like creating a great culture of people that know what this is all about?
Yeah, it is exactly about creating that culture. And what's interesting is I didn't hide the fact that I was trying to influence my team from them.
Right.
In fact, they were all trained on these principles. We all were speaking the same language, because you're right, it had to be part of our culture, right? You're always trying to influence someone in some interaction with them, whether you realize it or not, okay? How we differentiate this and how we can stand behind it is, are we doing this from an ethical standpoint? And so that's one of the big things we teach at the Institute is the ethical use of these things. Because just because I know I can influence a person down a path, should I?
Right.
Right.
Well, I could speak to all 7 of these. I mean, I have 4 kids and an amazing wife at home, and I can see the use of all of these, when it comes to something they really want to do, or everybody else is doing this. I'm the only kid that's not going to be able, you're not letting me do this type of a thing. I see the reciprocity. I see the liking. I see the we. I see the social proof. I see the authority. All of these things are natural communication components. And I think the first piece is just kind of educating yourself around what they are. And then how do we better, utilize them, right?
That's it. Step one is always recognize that they're present in a situation. And sometimes that's the hardest, because you're like, wait a minute, I feel like there's something here, but which principle is it? So, Cialdini in his book, he talks about he wants us to be the detective, right? The sleuth of influence, to figure out, well, what principle is present in this situation organically that I can tap into and bring to the surface. Right. And, one of the ways we know we can do this ethically is this just for my advantage and not the other person's? Is this for their advantage and not for my benefit? Or is this really a benefit for us both? Right? Do we both genuinely benefit by getting a yes in this situation? Well, if so, then we can be objectively confident that we're on that ethical side of the line.
All right. I love it. Now, you use the term influence activate. Explain that. What does that mean, and how do you maintain that long term?
Yeah, and that's just it. So influence is around you, whether you see it or not, right? Once you start to recognize these things are present because you've been trained to them, then you can activate them in a situation. You can bring them to the surface. You can tap into their power. For instance, if I'm talking to a patient about different treatment options and I'm saying, hey, you could do this partial, you could do this bridge, or you could do this implant. Well, if I know, and there's genuine facts to back up, that the majority of my patients choose an implant option, well, then I would do wise in that moment to realize that that's the time I should present that. Hey, here's these 3 options, and let's start with the implant option. Well, and by the way, this is the one the majority of my patients choose. So maybe it might be the one for you, right? So just adding that little bit of flavor to it, that social proof, and letting people know automatically is going to influence more people who are unsure. Maybe that should be the best option for me as well.
Yeah. And again, using them ethically and honestly, because no one's going to be able to call you out more than the chairside assistant that's watching you communicate this, right?
Exactly. And that's why I did with our team. That was one of our exercises was we tracked everything, right? So we had to have a firm foundation and the team had to be confident that we're using these things truthfully and in an ethical way. So when I told my patients, and I had a sign at checkout that said that 74% of our patients choose to pay their portion in full today at the time of service. We appreciate you doing the same. And they saw that big old sign at checkout, right? I backed that up and my team was confident in that because we tracked counter collections for months trying to see what is the statistic, right? Is that true? Do the majority pay in full or do we have to bill everybody, right? When we found it was 74%, then we could feel confident reporting that statistic because it was a true fact. But because I reported that fact, what do you think happened to that number?
Went up.
Went up. And then finally, after a few months, it capped out at 96%.
That's pretty high.
So now I got 96% of my patients paying in full their portion today. And we didn't have to ask them one thing. All they had to do was be influenced by the sign in front of them. And as they were checking out and they'd read the sign, it took them from waving, I'll see you next time, and waving goodbye to pulling the checkbook and the wallet out saying, all right, what do I need here? What do you take?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is so great. As always, I love having you on just to educate about anything. We're going to take some of these apart in future episodes, but I want you to talk about your new role and then how you guys work with dentists. Like, how does it work? What does it look like? Your new role, you're the CEO now? Is that?
So okay. I'm the U.S. CEO for Dr. Cialdini's Institute, which we just call the Cialdini Institute. In the past, to get this kind of training, he kind of kept the information scarce. So you had to come to a certified trainer like myself to learn about this material. And then you either came to one of my workshops or you hired me to come into your office and train your team kind of thing. Well, given there was only 12 of us in the entire world, it's hard to spread the language of influence to the masses that way, right? It just is. So Dr. Cialdini is 79 years old this year, and he's decided that the Cialdini Institute is going to be his legacy project. So why force people to come to us when now he spent like almost 2 years in the recording studio filming 10 hours of content where now you can learn the principles, what activates these things, what turns them on in a situation, and kind of what amplifies their power, kind of the gas you can throw on the fire. Now you can learn it directly online from Dr. Cialdini directly, self-paced as you go, which is really cool. So the education is now there. We've got opportunities to where you can learn application as well. So the best way to learn application of the principles is to put you in a mastermind group, right? And so that's what we do. Bi-monthly mastermind sessions where you're there with others to teach you how to use this stuff and how to apply it for your situation. And we even have opportunities where you can work with somebody like myself to help customize that application specifically for your situation, which is kind of cool. So kind of wherever you are on the spectrum of just, number one, learning the knowledge, number two, applying the knowledge, and number three, applying it specifically to your situation. We now got some opportunities to help people out there.
Yeah, I love it. And if you're listening to the podcast, Chris, I'm going to have you tell people where to go and we'll post links. But before we do that, give us some final thoughts. Wrap this with a bow. How, what we chatted about today and how important it is to the future of a dentist.
Yeah. So I can't underscore how important these things are. There's a reason why the book's 40 years old. Okay. I mean, think about this. What book do you know that's 40 years old and the information is still relevant today? Number one, or number two, prevalent everywhere, right? They've never been more important than they are today. Because the reason these things work on us and influence us is because we are so distracted. Our brain has too many things to focus on, too many things on its to-do list, right? Too much stimuli, too much things we're exposed to, thanks to the advent of the iPhone, okay? And how many marketing messages and social media content are we exposed to on a given basis? So in essence, our brain has realized it doesn't have time to sift through it all to make a decision. So the more distracted it gets and the more distracted we get, the more we lean on these things to decide.
Right.
So even though, technology, so to speak, is supposed to simplify certain things in our life, can't we all agree that it's made it also more complex?
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So the more complex things are, that's when we simplify with these principles. So if you don't understand these things, then now's the time to get into it, because they're going to be the main reason why we're deciding moving forward. And so if you haven't built your practice systems around these things, well, that's a huge opportunity you're bungling. And then you'll be left wondering why people aren't saying yes.
Yeah. So good. So do me a favor, share with our listeners where they can go to find out. Where do I start, Chris? Give me a starting point.
So the easiest place is to come to the website. It's Cialdini.com, and we'll have to put that in the show notes because nobody can spell his name correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Cialdini, it's Cialdini.com. So you don't have to put in www, just Cialdini.com. You can email me directly, Chris, CHRIS, at Cialdini.com. And I'll be more than happy to walk you through all of the options that we have. Okay, because there's some significant ones, both on the training aspect and video trainings on application of these things as well.
Awesome, buddy. Well, as always, thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kirk.
Yeah, well, stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. At the very least, please read Cialdini's books. They are fantastic, and they're required reading for not only just business, but life too. It's excellent. You'll get a better understanding. So we're going to post links. If you're not taking notes, don't worry. This is how we do it. We take notes for you. So if you're listening on, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Amazon, whatever you're listening to, you can flip up to the show notes. You're going to see a link to what Chris mentioned, and you can click on it. It'll take you right there. And I highly encourage you to check it out. So make sure you do that. Keep sending us suggestions. I'm going to have Chris back, and we're going to take some of these principles apart and show you exactly how they work in your practice in future episodes. But until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.